he gets hit more than any all-star I've ever been around. He's Philly tough.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Fantrax and Basketball Monster. Today's Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast is also brought to you by SeatGeek. Download the mobile app for the easiest way to buy tickets and use the promo code LOFANTASY to get yourself a $20 rebate off your first purchase. My name is Josh Lloyd, and as always, you can find me on Twitter at redrock_bball. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about today because there were 6 games in the NBA on Tuesday, but we've got 12 games to preview for Wednesday. We haven't had a slate that big in quite a while, so there's quite a lot of stuff to talk about. So
let's get to it.
All right, let's indeed get to it, Mr. Bolton. We'll start off with the monstrous line of the night. I don't really need to talk too much about Russell Westbrook because we've heard it all before about him. He's been fantastic this season. We're all aware of the exploits of Russell Westbrook. 27, 6, and 14, 3 triples and a steal. Yes, bad field goal percentage, 7 of 17, but a perfect 10 of 10 from the line. Russ is definitely a punt field goal player. He's obviously a punt turnovers guy as well. He's shooting 42% from the field on 24 attempts, and he is averaging 5.5 turnovers per game. That bothers me very little unless you're in a 9-cat roto league, but if you are in a 9-cat roto league, I'd like to know the team that's finishing on top, where they are in the turnover category. That's going to be interesting to me. I don't play any 9-cat roto leagues because I despise it as a format. But I would like to know where in your 9-cat roto leagues, the team that is finishing first, where they are ranked or how many points they're getting out of the turnovers category. I'll be interested to see where they sort of sit there, whether they're at a 12, 11 or a 10. Or from my understanding, I think that they're more likely to be a 6, 7 or 8 or a 4, 5, 6, that sort of a zone. But let me know where your leader in your 9-cat roto league is sitting in that turnover category. It's going to be interesting for me to see that. Russ is the 5th ranked player this season. He's putting up big numbers, and that's not including the punt situation of his field goals. We're talking about a top 3 guy if you're punting that field goal percentage, which is pretty much necessary given the volume and the percentage he shoots from there. But you can't complain about any of the other numbers: 31, 10.5, 10, 2 triples, 1.6 steals, 82% on 11 attempts. Like, these are numbers that are literally never happened before. So you're pretty happy with all that sort of stuff from Russ Westbrook. All right, I'll take some time now to tell you about today's sponsor of the podcast. And they've been a sponsor of the podcast for a very long time, over 12 months. And it's SeatGeek. You know about SeatGeek. Well, you should know about SeatGeek. And if you don't know about SeatGeek, I'm going to tell you about them because it's the best way for you to get tickets to go see the NBA, but to go see anything you want. You want to go see some NHL. You want to go see some WWE. You want to go see any shows, Broadway shows, concerts. SeatGeek is the place to go. It's the best place for you to get these tickets, and there's nothing better than seeing these things up close and in person. You can watch as many games as you want with your ass on the couch, but with SeatGeek, you get to the arena. You can feel the atmosphere, you can see the action, you can hear it all perfectly. So head to SeatGeek, and that's where you can find your tickets. The best thing about SeatGeek is how easy it is to use. You get the app on your phone, you download it takes 2 seconds, and then with a few taps you can be buying tickets at great value. With SeatGeek, you always get the best deal on every ticket because SeatGeek, what it does is it price compares across multiple sites and tells you, hey, this is a good deal. Look at this, big green highlight around it. This is a good deal. You should go for this one. Red circle around it, maybe not so much. But it tells you, where are you getting a good deal? What is a good price? How do you get them? And it does it all for you. So SeatGeek gives you the most bang for your buck by telling you where the value is. Plus, every ticket that you buy on SeatGeek is backed by their 100% money-back guarantee. The best thing, though, all these other things are great, but the best thing is that all listeners to this podcast get a $20 rebate off their first SeatGeek purchase. To get your $20 rebate, it's easy. Download the SeatGeek app and go to the settings tab and click add a promo code. And then when you've got to add your promo code, it's simple. To show them that you came from listening to Locked On Fantasy Basketball, enter LO Fantasy, Locked On Fantasy. And that will tell you, it will tell the guys at SeatGeek that, hey, you know what? I listen to Locked On Fantasy and I think it's above average. And I like your product. There you go. And they'll go, thanks, mate. Here's $20 back when you buy your first tickets. It's a win-win for everybody. It's as simple as that. Download the SeatGeek app, enter the promo code LOFantasy today. let's talk waiver wire line of the night. Now, at this point in the season, someone brought up a good point over on Basketball Monster today. You can talk about ownership percentages, but at this point in the season, there are lots of leagues that are dead, and there's lots of teams within leagues that are dead. So ownership percentages can be somewhat skewed. Players who should be owned in more leagues aren't players that are owned in too higher leagues. In reality, in the active ones aren't necessarily there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the waiver wire line of the night proceedings. It used to be under 70%. Now, from now on to the rest of the year, starting February, we're going at under 50%, which should give a more accurate representation of players that are available. So that means that Alan Crabb is our waiver wire line of the night tonight. Alan Crabb had 21 points. He did it on 5 of 10 shooting, but it was a career high 8 of 8 from the line for Crabby. He had 5 boards, 3 triples, and a block. You pretty much know what I'm going to say about Alan Crabb. He will occasionally have these numbers. Yes, he occasionally puts up these good scoring performances, but he offers you nothing. He's the 158th ranked player this season, scoring 11 points per game. He's hitting his shots at 47%, 87 from the line, 44 from 3, so he's a brilliant efficiency player. If your league's counting true shooting or if it's counting 3-point percentage, then Alan Crabb definitely gets a bump in a setting like that. But in a standard setting that's not including those, then Crabb's not really worth looking at. He doesn't give you assists, he doesn't give you rebounds, he doesn't give you steals. Now, over the last week, he's improved because he's shooting 61% from the field, and that's giving him 16 points per game. And that's enabling him to have value that's inside the top 100. It's a mirage. I wouldn't be looking at Crabb and going, man, I've got to get my hands on this guy. I've got to go and own him. But what he is a player that when the Blazers play on a low schedule night, you want some points, you want some free throw percentage, maybe you want some threes, you can get Crabb because you feel good about him getting you 10 points, 11 points, maybe 2 threes, and he's got the ability to go for 5 threes and 20 points. And that can be worth the go at. It's not going to hurt your field goal percentage. It's going to help your free throw percentage. You're not getting anything else. But if you're looking for those categories, Crabb can do it. And that's sort of where he sits to me. Just a perfect 12-team stream guy under certain circumstances. But owning him long-term doesn't really have the desired effect of what you would want a player that you're going to own long-term to do. So that's sort of where he sits. But it was a good performance from him against the Charlotte Hornets. The young gun of the night, welcome back, D'Angelo Russell. Russell came back after a few games off with that calf strain and MCL sprain. 22, 7, and 10 for Russell. 2 triples, a steal, a block, 7 of 17 from the field, and 6 of 8 from the free throw line. People are quite disappointed with D'Angelo Russell this season. He did come into the season with some pretty high expectations because of numerous things. No Kobe Bryant, so the usage was going to go to him. The way that Luke Walton used him in the preseason, the way he played in the preseason, every indication pointed to that. Now, he's been used in some curious ways, I guess, with minutes actually playing less minutes this season than last year, but he has suffered quite a few injuries and dealt with knee problems, which has limited him in the games where that's occurred, and then when he comes back, he eases himself back into it. But it wasn't the case today. He played 34 minutes and put up a huge line. Now, he's still the 86th ranked player in the league this season, and there is no reason that he should be available on any waiver wires, and he still can finish from here on out a top 40, maybe top 50 player. If Walton decides to go, let's go 30 minutes a night for Russell, which I believe that they should be doing. And this was definitely a positive. To come back after multiple leg injuries, and then plug him in and go, here's 34 minutes with no one else in the backcourt hurting, that's a really good sign. I'm not holding my breath that he's going to get 34 a night, but I feel like he's going to be at least in that 29 to 30 zone, and that's going to push him probably into the top 75. Now, he is a guy that is struggling from the field. He's under 40% from the year, but recently he's increased that. He's 41% over the last month, which is only 12 games, but it's an improvement, and he's got room to get better because he's shooting threes at only 30% in that time. So I think that Russell, I wouldn't say it's a buy low because you don't buy low a guy that just went 22, 7, and 10, especially when he plays for the Lakers. But if he puts up a subpar performance in the next game, I would be happy to take him. And as I've said this plenty of times this year, I will take him at cheap prices. And I think that he can turn it into something where he becomes a top 6, top 7 guy on your roster, because I do think that the role will go up. I do think that he will improve. And we saw the beginnings of that today, hopefully. The dud of the night is a Lakers teammate. It's Jordy Clarkson, who is owned in 86% of leagues. Clarko had 6 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists. He had a steal. He had 3 of 7 from the field. And with D'Angelo Russell back, he played 21 minutes. He had played 36 and 35 minutes the 2 previous games, Clarko. In fact, he scored in double digits for 8 consecutive games, but this wasn't a great one. To be honest, I think that he is going to become a player that's not necessarily ownable from here on out. I think the minutes come down now that Russell is back, and he won't be getting, well, over the last 2 weeks, he's played 30 minutes a game, with Russell around. Also, without Russell around, 30 minutes. And that made him the 109th best player. Over the last month, where he's played 26 minutes, he's 143rd. And I think 26 minutes is a more accurate representation of what he is going to play moving forward. And yeah, that's probably not going to mean that he is going to be an absolute lock on your roster, have to hold on to sort of a player. Because he just, unless they change their mind and start running Russell and Clarkson together, which they haven't done very much at all this season because they continue to persist with Uncle P there. But unless they go with that Clarkson route, which would give me pause in holding on to him. But what I suggest we do is just see what happens over the next 2 weeks leading up into All-Star. Monitor what Luke Walton says and see what happens. But don't consider Geordie Clarkson an untouchable, because if the minutes stick in this mid to low 20s range, he's not going to be able to produce the value that you need to keep him on a roster. All right, let's move into these games now. We'll talk about them in a little bit of extra detail. The first game we're going to take a look at is the New York Knicks and the Washington Wizards. Kristaps, he was ruled out due to a stomach illness. He was vomiting and nauseous before the game. So Jeff Hornacek decided to go an interesting route. He decided, let's start Bill Hernan-Gomez up front with Joakim Noah. Now, I've got no issue with Hernan-Gomez starting. I just have an issue with Noah starting, really. And yeah, they don't really have many other fours. But start Melo there. Put Justin Holiday on the wing. Put Mindaugas Kuzminskas there. Bill Hernan-Gomez was good. 32, and just to quickly clear it up if no one's aware, I had a couple of people mention to me today that we sent out a tweet on Basketball Monster that Guillermo Hernan-Gomez is starting, and a couple of people said, you got the wrong brother. No, Guillermo is Willie. Guillermo is Billy. The other one is Juancho. So if you ever see Guillermo Hernan-Gomez, that is Billy Hernan-Gomez. That's just his full proper name. But I just wanted to clear that up. So Billy, 32 minutes for Bill, 15, 14, and 4. Didn't shoot the ball well. And this is the sort of player that I do think that he can be. To me, he's an Enes Kanter type of player. A player that can score, that can rebound, and doesn't provide much defense, although he's blocking shots at a decent rate this year. Not fantastic, but decent. And some nice numbers. Is he the player that's going to get the most minutes at center? Well, nobody knows. And the reason nobody knows is because Hornacek has no idea what he is doing. Reminder, this is one game after the Knicks played a 4 overtime game and Hernan-Gomez saw 3 minutes. And then he comes out and plays 32. So the up and down nature of his minutes continues. It doesn't change. This is exactly what they continue to do all the time. Is he worth owning? Yeah, they're nice numbers. No problem grabbing him, but watch for a 5-minuter in the next one. I do feel that they're going more towards Hernan-Gomez. They need to just eliminate Noah out of the rotation pretty much and run Hernan-Gomez and O'Quinn there. That would be the best for the Knicks. I think there is zero chance that they do that, but that would be the best. And that's what's going to put a limit on Billy's minutes moving forward and Billy's production. So he's okay to add, but just have some patience or have some tempered expectations. Kyle O'Quinn was great, and he's always great when he plays. Well, nearly always. 17 minutes for Cock, 13 and 10 with 2 blocks in just those 17 minutes. A great production for him, but he's going to get caught in this morass of centre minutes. Well, Noah went scoreless in 15, and Noah played 40 minutes in the last game. So, again, Hornacek, no idea what he's doing with his rotation. The Knicks got stomped by the Wizards in this one. There's no reason to own Noah in any standard leagues. O'Quinn is more a 14 to 60, probably 16 team leaguer, while Bill, as I touched on before, can be grabbed. With Derrick Rose out and continuing to be out for a couple more games, Brando Jennings played 38 minutes, 21 and 5 with 4 steals and 2 triples. He's fine to own as long as Rose is out, while Mallow had 26 and 5 in his 32 minutes. Not much else happening for the Knicks. Oh, except for Courtney Lee, who I said, you know what, Lee's starting to play well. He's starting to put up some numbers, and then he has 5 points in 27 minutes to remind me of who Courtney Lee actually is, a very subpar fantasy producer. The Wizards, Brattles, Beal, big numbers from the Wizards here in this one. Brattles had 28 points in 32 minutes and 4 assists on 67% shooting. Great stuff from Beal. Marcin Gortat, well, he went one better. He was 100% from the field for 15 and 10 with a steal and a block in 31 minutes. A good night from Gortat. I still think that he is going to, when it comes to the most important time of the season, he's going to suffer because I think his minutes will drop off once. If you know, I could say when Mahinmi comes back, but at this point, it's more if Mahinmi comes back, and that's going to impact Gortat. Markieff Morris continues to be great, 24 and 10 for Markieff in 34 minutes, while Kelly Oubre played 28 off the bench, 14 and 2, and he's almost in this Marcus Smart sixth starter sort of a role. Obviously, they play different positions, but he's getting 25-ish minutes a night, and that's making him a decent scorer and a 16-team league guy, maybe pushing to 14-team. It's not quite there yet. Johnny Wall was not efficient, but he had 15, 4, and 13, but you really did hurt the percentages. While Otto Porter, he was labouring. The Wizards beat reporters were saying that he just looked like he was struggling a lot with his hip. So did Locked On Wizards host Ben Standig. He'll have a lot of information of that on the Locked On Wizards podcast coming up. That Porter was, and he didn't look right out on the court. He just was he looked like he was just grimacing. He just didn't look like he was moving freely, and he's had hip problems his entire NBA career. Once again, he doesn't take any shots. 9 shots in 29 minutes, 10 and 6, but 10 and 6 is good considering he started the game scoreless for the first half. Some nice numbers from Otto, but he is starting to just pull back just a little bit from that red-hot start to the year. Let's talk about New Orleans and the Toronto Raptors. Drew Holiday is killing it at the moment. 30 points, 2 steals, 2 blocks, 3 triples, 62% shooting in 41 minutes. This was an overtime game, but he has been absolutely crushing it. You know I like Drew Holiday. And yeah, this is high shooting percentages, which he's doing consistently at the moment. But I don't think that what he's currently doing is too far off what we can expect. I think he can be a top 20 player. Etuan Moore got hot late. He hit 5 triples. I believe he hit 5. I believe his first 5 threes ended with 17 points, but it's as fluky as it comes with him. While Bud Hield finally got some more minutes after a real terrible January for Hield. 33 minutes here, 15 and 6 with 3 triples. A good night from Hield. I just don't see any reason to even consider him in 12-teamers. Tony Davis, not the greatest night, but when you have a stinker and you can still put up 18 and 13 with 3 assists, 18 and 17 with 3 assists and 3 blocks, you're a pretty good player. The problem is he went 4 of 18 from the field, so just obliterated your field goal percentage. Not a great way to start off the week there. Well, with Dante Cunningham going down with a wrist injury, Terry Jones was able to play 34 minutes. Terrence had 12 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and a block. The Terrence Jones conundrum continues. If Cunningham's out, then go and grab him and see what happens. But Gentry has no ability to trust him. He is not a good player. But if injuries open up minutes, the stats will accumulate. But don't have huge confidence in him. Tyreek Evans was resting this game. He will be back for the next game. So with him out, Timmy Frazier played 12 minutes and had 2 points. On to the Raptors. Kyle Lowry. Fantastic again, Lowry. 33, 4, and 10 in 45 minutes with 6 triples. This is a back-to-back for the Raptors, and he played 45 minutes. He was 52% shooting again, 43 from 3. Just continues to really be... Him and Isaiah Thomas are just shooting so far above career norms that, again, that I'm scared of what happens in March in particular with their numbers. No DeMar DeRozan. He's out for the next 2 games with a sore ankle. So my boy Norm Powell started. 40 minutes for Norm, 18 and 4, 3 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. Now, I talked about him yesterday, I believe. I think it was yesterday. I know I talked about him. I went on the Hoop Ball pod today and spoke about him before this game ad nauseum. He's really good. He's really, really good. Now, normally I'm not a fan of stashing players before trade deadlines or anything like that. And stashing Norm Powell is tough because I don't see him getting traded anywhere, and I don't see the Raptors moving on from DeMar Carroll or making a switch. But this guy needs to start. He's better than Carroll. He's better than Ross. He's comfortably better than these players, and he's got a great fantasy upside as well. He's a name to watch. If any sort of whisper comes out of Toronto that Powell is gone somewhere, because he should start for pretty much almost every team in the league. I won't go too far. Maybe 25, 26 teams he could start for. Or if the Raptors decide to make a change, then he's a must-own player. Simple as that. Valanciunas looked great, 20 and 12 in 32 minutes, while Bebe also looks solid, 7 and 8 in 22 minutes with a steal and 2 blocks. The way that Bebe's playing, Jared Sullinger just doesn't get into the rotation. Did not play again here. Sullinger's owned in only 21% of leagues, but that's too high. Sullinger is not a 12-teamer. He won't become a 12-teamer. He's not a 14-teamer. he's barely a 16-team as they just don't. And it's not a matter of him just needing to play himself back into shape, because he is a shape. The shape is fat ass, but he is a shape. He's just not needed. They've got Pat Patterson, they've got Bebe, they've got Jonas. Pascal Siakam's doing nothing in his 7 minutes, but he's there. They just don't need Salinger to do anything at this point. Pat had 10 and 7 in his 35 minutes. He's still just a deeper league guy, while Demario Carroll played 37 minutes. That's a bonus for him, I guess, to play that many minutes. 8 and 8 with 2 steals. You can most likely do better than him in 12-team formats. All right, let's talk the Sacramento Kings and the Houston Rockets. Just a game that features DeMarcus Cousins and Jim Harden, and both guys disappoint. Is a real letdown for DFS purposes as well, especially when we were anticipating such a high total, and the game went for a total of 188. Just a complete letdown. This was a smashing by the Rockets. They were they won by 22 points. They were up by a lot more than that. Boogie had 16, 7, and 5. Will Cauley-Stein, probably the story here, 10 and 6 with 3 blocks in 24 minutes. And a lot of the times when Cauley-Stein has big games, it comes because he shoots 80%. He shot just 40% here, but he did get the extra minutes because this was a blowout and because Cousins only played 25 minutes. So I'm not reading too much into Cauley-Stein, but he's playing better. And that means in deeper leagues, we do need to start paying some attention to him without getting overly excited by it. But we do need to start paying some attention to Will Cauley-Stein in those scenarios. Garrett Temple looked like he suffered a hamstring strain. They don't think it's going to be all that serious, but he was putting up borderline value anyway. So if he's missing any time, move on. Matty Barnes stepped up in his absence, had 5 and 11 in 30 minutes, but that's not enough to excite us, while the point guard situation continues to confuse. 26 minutes for Darren Collison, 5, 2, and 4 on 2 of 10 shooting, while Ty Lawson only saw 12 minutes because he had to go into the rooms to have an x-ray on his hand. It turned out it was fine, but that cost him some playing time. Really hard to own Ty in a 12-teamer. Collison I still think you own, but that is 2 great games and then followed by 2 absolute stinkers, and that's going to just be the case for him the rest of the way, I reckon. Jim Harden only took 9 shots and went 10, 7, and 8. Wasn't a good game from him. But Ryan Anderson, he saluted with a 25 and 11 game with 6 triples and 1 steal. Try and trade him. People love Ryan Anderson. Well, some people do. They love his ability to hit threes and get big scoring numbers. And 25 is a big scoring number. He is still a player that's barely a top 100 player, because he's so up and down and he provides nothing in the other areas. So if you can get him back for anything that's a top 60 guy, it is a massive, massive win. So I would be trying to do it after this game. The center situation in Houston, it continues to be confusing. Clint Capella moved into the starting lineup. He did what he does pretty much, 20 minutes, 12 and 11. Montrezl Harrell played 15 minutes after not seeing the court at all in the first half. He had 7, 3, and 3. Nene played 13 minutes, had 11, 1, and 1 with 2 blocks. Harrell can go in 12s and 14s. Nene should never have been owned in those cases, and Capella is going to have borderline 12 value, but there is no chance that he is getting back to the value that he had beforehand when he was getting 26, when he had that stretch for about 3 weeks, 4 weeks. He was playing 30 minutes a night, and he was a top 40 type of player. It's just not happening. D'Antoni's going to continue to chop and change the backups and leave Capella at this 22-minute sort of a role. Pat Bev stunk. He was 2 of 11 for 5, 5, and 5. Still want to hold on to him, though. And Eric Gordon had 17 points in his 28 minutes. Let's move on to the Oklahoma City Thunder and the San Antonio Spurs. Good win for the Spurs here. Vic Oladipo, another solid performance. 15 and 4 with 4 steals. And Domantas Sabonis, probably the big talking point here. 35 minutes for Sabonis, and he played through fouls as well. 13 and 10 with 2 triples, 2 steals, and a block. Is he going to be the guy that's the biggest beneficiary of Kanter's absence? He played 27 minutes the first game when Kanter was out. 35 here. I don't know how high his upside is. I don't think it's top 100. But in a 14-team league, he's an automatic add, I believe, in 14-teamers. In 12s, I would just watch. But this is a promising situation. Joffrey Laverne only played 16 minutes after getting over 20 in the last one, but he still took 8 shots. So a decent amount of usage for Joffrey. But if they're going to limit him to less minutes than Sabonis, then Sabonis becomes more the target. While Jeremy Grant, who is not good, played 11 minutes for 3 points. Now, some of this was because the Spurs went relatively big as well, and the Spurs also went big to counter Oklahoma City, so it's a bit of a chicken and the egg situation, but that didn't allow Grant to really get on the court too much. I love that Cam Payne played 19 minutes. I don't love that he missed all 4 of his shots. He had 2 points for 3 assists, a steal, and 2 blocks, but the 19-20 minutes, it's pushing in the direction that I want it to go, in the 23-24 minute zone. For now, he's just a watch, while Steve Adams had 16 and 12. The Spurs, Kawhi Leonard, 36 points on 50% shooting, 8 boards, 4 assists, 2 blocks. Kawhi is 1 game away from tying the San Antonio Spurs record for most 30-point games in a season. Tim Duncan holds that record. Kawhi is on 15, Duncan has 16. So we're halfway through the season, 60% of the way through the season, and Kawhi is almost there. He has been great this year. LaMarcus Aldridge had a very good night as well, 25 and 6, and also added the 3 blocks on a very efficient shooting. He hasn't been awesome this year, I think that's fair to say, but he has these occasional little games or little streaks where you go, yeah, maybe he can get back to top 20. I don't believe that he will. Dwayne Dedmon started, and this Pau Gasol starting spot's going to be rotated, it looks like. It's been, in the last 3 games, David Lee, Davis Bertans, and now Dwayne Dedmon. Dedmon played 17 minutes and had 6 and 8 with 3 steals and a block, while Dave Lee played 26 and went 7 and 7. So Lee's minutes appear consistent, mid-20s, but mid-20s of David Lee is not enough for me to go and add. It's a 16-team scenario. Dedmon's the guy with the highest fantasy upside, but he's not going to play enough minutes. And Bertans played 23 in this one as well, going 2 and 5 with a steal and a block. That's 20-team league sort of stuff from him. John Simmons returned. He had 7 and 6 with 3 steals, and his return limited Kyle Anderson back to just the 2 minutes here. And Dan Green did his defensive stuff. He had 2 triples. He had 2 steals. He had 3 blocks. But you know where he lies. He's that guy that gives you triple ones and not much else. That can be useful, but it's not useful for everybody. So just pay attention to see whether that actually helps your team or doesn't do anything. Charlotte and Portland, good win for the Blazers here. Kemba Walker, 22, 5 assists, 2 steals. A good night from Kemba. Same with Nick Batum, who had 18, 8 and 6 with 4 triples. The rest of the Hornets, they struggled. This was probably the first game in Cody Zeller's absence that Spencer Hawes didn't play well or get good minutes. 16 minutes for Spencer, 8, 4, and 2. And they ran out some Christian Wood out there. We had Frank Kaminsky, we had Roy Hibbert taking up the rest of the center minutes. Now, Zeller's likely to miss one more game. It's on Wednesday. So if you did pick up Hawes, that run's coming to an end, and Hawes is likely sitting on your bench now because there's 12 games on Wednesday. So move on and grab another player. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist battled some foul trouble. He played 24 minutes for 5 and 5, but with Marco Bellinelli and now Jeremy Lamb back, Kidd-Gilchrist is going to struggle to play the 33-34 minutes that he was doing. They might go back to that original rotation that they ran, where Kidd-Gilchrist would play 26 minutes, 25 minutes, and Bellinelli and Lamb would chip in with the rest of the playing time here. Good game from Marv Williams as well, 10 and 5 with 3 blocks in 33 minutes. Has definitely picked up his play recently after a stinking start to the season. He is fine to own in 12s, but the upside is limited. Dame Lillard and CJ McCollum both at over 50% shooting. Well, sorry, McCollum was exactly 50. Lillard had 27, 4 and 4, and McCollum had 18 points with 4 assists and 3 steals. Good numbers for those guys, while Myers Leonard filled in for the injured Ed Davis and played 25 minutes and had 12, 3 and 4 with 2 triples. Great. Leonard can do this stuff. He's just so inconsistent, and he's just as likely to be in DMP CD in the next game when Eddie returns. Mason Plumlee struggled, 7 and 11 in his 23 minutes, while unsurprisingly Noah Vonleh struggled, though he did grab 10 rebounds. Now, the small forward position, Mo Harkless got more minutes, 28 in this one, while Evan Turner played 22. This is not to say that Harkless is going to play more minutes moving forward, but it's an interesting scenario. I don't think that Harkless is a 10-team guy. I think he's a borderline 12 in this new environment where he's getting limited by the presence of both Evan Turner and Al-Farouq Aminu, and that puts a cap on his value that you can probably do better in other spots. Let's talk about the last game of the night. The Denver Nuggets, who were without Manny Mudiay, Farton Will Barton, and Nikola Jokic, they just fell short to the Lakers. Wilson Chandler put up a big game, 26, 9 and 4, 3 steals and a block on 50% shooting. He had really started to drift, but he's stabilized again, and he's a fine guy to own in all leagues. While Gaz Harris had 17, 4 and 4 with 4 steals. Don't conflate this performance from Gaz as being a scenario because Farton Will Barton was out. That's not the case. Harris is playing this role regardless. He's got 32 minutes. He will get 32 minutes. He's the man in this situation at shooting guard. It's not because Barton was out that he had to play 40 minutes or anything like that. The Rooster had 17 points while Ken Fareed had 14 and 17 with 2 steals and 28 minutes. Jameer Nelson also dished 7 assists. I would imagine that Manny Moutier, or he's likely going to be back for the next game, so any value that Nelson had is done. A nice Jamal Murray performance, 14 points in 27 minutes. And Murray, what we think about the backcourt smush of value in Denver, I wouldn't be shocked if they just say, all right, next season, Jamal Murray, Gaz Harris, that's our starting backcourt, and run Murray as the point guard because Moutier has struggled a little bit this season. If I'm going to mention struggle, I can't avoid talking about Yusuf Nurkic. 12 minutes for Nurk, 1 point, 4 rebounds, and an assist. He missed all 7 of his field goal attempts. He looked terrible. You picked him up when Nikola Jokic went down. Smart move. Done. He's gone. Jokic is back, and you can make the argument that I'm stashing him for a trade, and I had this discussion with Dan over on Hoopball today talking about Nurkic. For a start, okay, so the Nuggets want to do him a favor, is the report. They want to send him somewhere where he can start. Why? Why do they want him to do him a favor? Because they literally have no other centers on their roster, so they'd need to get another center back. You would think they would need to get another center back because they have no other centers on the roster. What team needs a starting center that he is an upgrade over? There's not many. And if you need a center back, you would have to send Nurkic to that team as their starter and then send someone who's starting for that team back to be a reserve. Does that all make sense? It just doesn't feel likely that Nurkic is going to a situation where they're going to say, all right, you're playing 30. It just doesn't feel like that's realistic at this point. He might go somewhere and be a 22-minute guy, but at this point he's just imploding. The value is just not there for Nurkic, and he's just not going to play when Jokic is back at all until this trade deadline, which is 3 weeks away. And yeah, maybe he goes somewhere. I just don't see it being a game-changing situation of him going somewhere and all of a sudden, all right, it's 30 minutes a night for Nurkic, top 50 down the stretch. Like it's not worth holding on to a 0 for weeks in order to get a guy ranked 110th. Just not worth it. I don't think. Anyway, for the Lakers, Lou Williams, the minutes have come down now that Russell's back, but he was still fantastic. 21 points in 24 minutes, 7 assists, 2 steals, and 4 triples. Trade him away. If you can trade him away based on this and say, look, Russell was back, still went for 21, 5, and 7, do it. Because the minutes are cut, and he's not going to be a 64% shooter. That's as clear as day. So the value will drop, the minutes have dropped, and this is your last chance to try and squeeze something out of him. Tim Mozgov played a good game, 23 minutes for Mozzie, 12 and 6 with 3 blocks, and Tariq Black, he started in place of Julius Randle and had 6 and 8 with a steal and a block. Decent numbers for Tariq, but he's a 20-team leaguer. How's Ivica Zubats? 21 minutes for Zubats, 17 and 6, continues to put up numbers. If I'm stashing anyone, it's him over Nurkic, no doubt, because he is continuing to press forward. He never looks disappointing when he's on the court. The coaching staff praises him a lot. He's putting up solid numbers. Mozgov, he had a good game here, but there's clearly no trust in Moz most of the time. Zubac can actually close games. He's done that a couple of times recently. He's getting over 20 minutes a night, and I think the only way is up for Zubac at the moment. Really good stuff from him here. Again, limited minutes, and I would have loved him to get some more playing time. And yes, it was without Julius Randle. I understand that, but I think that Zubac is going to be able to at least lock in for 15 minutes when Randle comes back initially, and within a week, maybe, then he's getting 22, 25 minutes. It is a risk. I actually picked him up in a 10-team league because it's a league with games limits for the week. So I can almost effectively just sort of stash him and just say, okay, let's just see where this goes. I had Manuel Moutier, dropped him when he got injured, didn't need the point guard numbers. Let's just see what happens with Zubats over this next couple of weeks. That's a situation where you can clearly see the arrow moving forward, and it doesn't require a trade to come through. Now, speaking of trades, everyone would have heard about this DeMarcus Cousins trade to Phoenix. A, it's not happening. Fine. And B, the report was, or one of the reports about it is that it was something that was discussed back in December. And as I repeat a lot of times in this podcast, when you hear a trade rumor come out, it is a trade that is dead. It is a trade that has been discussed in passing and has been completely kiboshed. Every trade that goes down, you don't hear about it until it goes down. You don't hear about it. You might hear about it that day, but you don't hear about it until it goes down. everyone, I'm going to avoid drafting Boogie because what if he gets traded? Cool. People have been saying that for 3 years. These sort of things are just so rare. They just don't happen. And then when they do happen, they're out of the blue. James Harden, remember when he got traded? Darren Williams. Like, no one knew any of this shit was coming. These are big name players getting traded. No one knew any of this stuff coming. And that's generally the way you can... No problem that they've discussed it. But a discussion might mean, hey, do you want to take Alex Len, TJ Warren, and our first round pick for DeMarcus Cousins? And Vivek goes, Vivek, Vlade, whoever's answering the phone goes, no. Sources say a trade was discussed for DeMarcus Cousins, TJ Warren, Alex Len, and a first round pick. Like, that's the discussion. They go, do you want him? No, cool, done. The trade's not happening. So most trade rumors that you hear are done. They're finished. They've been discussed and they've been rejected. The Kyle Korver trade, no one knew that was coming. It just came. And that's how these things generally go down. All right, I'm going to take a quick break and then we're going to be back to look ahead to all of the action that's coming up on Wednesday. There are 12 games, so we've got a lot to discuss.
Now I had a dream of you on that cold September night. I had nothing left to look forward to. I thought you were all I wanted, but I never really knew just what you could do. Never want to leave you 'cause I think it's worth to be alone. Times like this I wonder if I'd be better on my own. The constant torture of this love, something I just disown. 'Cause I've got to wonder if I'd be better off alone. It seems I give and you just take. I try to speak my mind. Won't you listen for heaven's sake? I try not to raise my voice, but you've given me no choice. Why can't you understand? Never want to leave you 'cause I think it's worth to be alone. Times like this I wonder if I'd be better on my own. The constant torture of this love, something I...
All right, guys, let's talk perfect DFS, starting with FanDuel. Kyle Lowry, 49.8. D'Angelo Russell, 45.4. Alan Crabb at 29. Lou Williams at 40.5. Kawhi Leonard, 52.6. Wilson Chandler, 50.8. Tony Davis at 50.9. Ryan Anderson at 43.7. And Bill Hernan-Gomez at 36.8 for a total of 399.5. And that costs the full $60,000 on FanDuel. On DraftKings, Kyle Lowry, 56. Lou Williams, 43.25. Markeef's at 41. Ryan Anderson's at 49.25. Billy Hernan-Gomez is at 39.5. D'Angelo's at 49.25. Wilson Chandler, 53.25. And Kawhi at 55 for a total of 386.5. And that cost $49,400. Again, there are 12 games on, so we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. The first one of these games that we are going to talk about is the Minnesota Timberwolves. They are traveling to Cleveland to take on the Cavs. The Cavs are favored by 7, and the total is 213 points here. No injury worries for us to really be looking at here. We know that Kevin Love has already been ruled out, but no questionable tags at this point to pay attention to. Overall, this game, it is just not a great fantasy-looking game, especially when we have a look at it over on both sites. There's not a lot to love. You could look at Channing Frye, who's at 4,200 on FanDuel, but I don't love that. He's at 4,000 on DraftKings, which is a little bit better, and we know if he gets hot and hits the threes, it's going to work out in your favor, but I would look at him as a GPP guy. Let's talk point guards. Kyrie is at 8,600. That's That's a lot. There's 12 games on. You can do better than Kyrie at that sort of price. I do not like that at all. Now, Rick Rubio has been on fire. He is at 6,900.
Giggity!
He dropped, what did he drop? He dropped 47 in the last game. That's obviously a big performance. 51 going by DraftKings scoring. But at that sort of a salary, the matchup is a good one for Rick, but I don't really feel all that confident of him bringing me 35 plus points in every matchup, despite his recent good performance. That came on the back of 22 points and 6 triples, which is just not going to happen for Rubio all that often. So I wouldn't be overly looking at him as being a great play. Iman Shumpert's at 4,100 really stunk, or has stunk over the last couple of games. I don't think he's a high priority player. While Zachary Levine at 6,200 did not have a good game. 17 points in 43 minutes is a horrible return. He is a GPP guy in a really good matchup, but it's GPP only. His current form is just not enough to rely upon him in cash. At small forward, we're talking LeBronald and we're talking Wigo. LeBron is up to $11,000 on FanDuel. That is one of the biggest cases of no thank you. To me, that is way too expensive. On DraftKings at $10,200, not bad. That's fine. I can see the upside in using LeBron there. We know that he's come out and he's pretty fired up at Charles Barkley. Whether that translates to on-court production or not, I doubt it. Look, LeBron's lowest score over the last 5 has been 50, so he's been crushing it anyway. I think at DraftKings he is absolutely fine to consider. At $11,000 on FanDuel, 12 games on the slate, that is not a good use of $11,000, in my opinion. As for Wigo, he had 41 in the last game. He's at 7,500. It's a good matchup for him. Small forwards have actually been able to put up good numbers against the Cavs. Does he have a chip on his shoulder against LeBron and the team that traded him away? Well, he has done well against them in the past. I think that he's worthwhile looking at, but he's not overly consistent. He's consistent recently, but as a general rule, he's not a consistent player. Like it on FanDuel, decently as a GPP, but that's about it. DraftKings, I'm not really heavily invested in using him there. Shabazz Muhammad's at 39. He's a great GPP play. That's a hard phrase to say sometimes, just because of his low salary. And he's been giving us pretty consistent numbers, averaging 21 points in the last 3 over on DraftKings, where he's priced at 4,000, which is almost enough to say let's put it in cash and hope it works out. There are other options that are better than him in most cases, but he's not a horrible guy to look at all. Power forward Channing Frye just touched on. He's worth a look, but that salary has increased, and that does turn me off him a bit. And centre Tristan Thompson was disgraceful in the last game. It's a negative matchup here for him going up against Karl Towns. 5,100 with 12 games on. You can do better than Tomo. As for Karl Anthony Towns, he is at 10,900. He dropped 49 in the last game and is averaging 52 points across the last 5 at $11,000, or basically 11,000. Is it worth looking at? Yeah, but the matchup's not good. Centers do struggle against Cleveland, and he needs to not struggle. He needs to excel. So I think that you can do better than Karl Anthony Towns, unless you've just got a bunch of cash left over and you want to throw it on someone. I would prefer to throw the 11,000 on LeBron than Towns, especially on DraftKings, where LeBron's only at 10.2 and Towns is at 10.6. That's the way that I would look at that. Didn't talk Gorgie Jeng, which I probably should have. He's at 5,800. A marginally disappointing game in the last one, but still had 25 points. I don't think his upside's all that high, but I think Jeng is a decent cash play for a low salary. 5,500 for him on DraftKings is an even better scenario. So I think that Gorgie Jeng is not a bad guy to look at, and I don't think his ownership is going to be all that high either. All right, we move on to the next game now. We're going to talk Indiana Pacers and Orlando Magic. This matchup gave us some of the worst basketball we've seen this entire season earlier on in the year. Let's hope we don't get a repeat of that. The Pacers are favored by 2.5, and the total is 211.5. And there's a lot of questionable things happening in this one, because CJ Miles, Kevin Seraphin, and Rod Stuckey are all questionable. And you might look at it and go, who gives a shit, Josh? Well, the thing you want to pay attention to and give a shit about is CJ Miles and Rod Stuckey, because Miles is the starting 2-guard, and if he's playing 30 minutes at his low price, he's got GPP upside. But if both Miles and Stuckey are out, it's going to mean little dog Glenn Robinson III and Monte Ellis are going to have to play those minutes at the 2. Now, Monte's been horrible this season, and I wouldn't really be getting too overly excited about using him, because even when he plays, his usage is so minimal. But he's a minimum salary player now, Monte Ellis. That is the age that we live in, that Monte Ellis is minimum salary and is at 3,100 on DraftKings. And if both Miles and Stuckey are out, then he comes into calculations, as does Glenn Robinson, who had 21 points in the last game at 3,600. So there is some value in those guys if those players are out. Let's talk point guards. Lord Alfred Payton is at 6,900. The matchup looks to be good. He has struggled in the past against Indiana. He's putting up some good numbers, but that is too high for me. The 6,900 is just too high for Alfred Payton. 64 on DraftKings is a little bit better, and it's a $300 price dip. So I can feel more confident about Alfred over on DraftKings. I do think that he has some value over there. As for Jeff Teague,
My name is Jeff.
he is at 7,800. Really crushing it at the moment, averaging 44 across the last 3 games. The Payton matchup is a marginal negative, but almost close to a wash. It's just, do you expect Teague to continue on this huge run where he's played 38 minutes a game over the last 3, so that's obviously a lot of playing time. 7,800 is alright, but it just doesn't scream brilliant value. Have no problem with you using him though. Evan Fournier is back. He's at 5,100. He struggled. I think that Fournier is going to be a nice GPP option just because his ownership will be low. He could easily exceed $5,000 worth of value on both sides. No problem about that. But the confidence in doing it is not going to be high, but he can easily do it. And the ownership for Fournier, I don't believe, will be very high. So he is definitely someone to consider without being overly loving with it. I don't know if CJ Watson will continue to start. He played 34 minutes in the last game and scored 29 points, and at 4,200, that's nice, but I don't have faith in him getting enough minutes to actually return that sort of a value. It felt somewhat fluky of a performance, so I wouldn't be getting my hopes up about CJ Watson. At small forward, CJ Miles at 4,100. Well, we don't know if he's going to play. I think he'd be limited even if he did play, so that's not going to be a strong play for me there. While Aaron Gordon at $5,000 has really been struggling, and now he gets Paul George on him, so I don't really think the defensive situation is going to be a great help here. Same thing for Jeff Green, who's at 3,800. Although Green at 3,800 is worth a look in terms of GPPs because he can throw up a big game once in a blue moon. This is not looking like it's the situation for that blue moon to turn blue. Paul George is up to 9,500 on FanDuel. That is a very big price rise, and I do not like. At 8,100 for him on DraftKings, it's not bad. He's averaging 44 over the last 5 and dropped 53 in the last game. Totally love it. That's a bad sounding phrase. Totally love it. I don't like the way that sounded. 8,100 for Paul George? Fine. 9,500? No. I would rather head that in a different direction than go with the 9,500 on Paul George. That is just an abominably high salary rise. Serge Ibaka at 5,800 had a bit of a bounce back game. He gets a decent matchup here, but I don't have full confidence in him being able to do that consistently, so I would look at him as a GPP player at 6,100 on DraftKings. The format suits him a little bit more. The matchup is a good one. I feel okay about him a little bit more on DraftKings, but still not. I'm not full of confidence for Serge. As for Thad Young, he's getting by on steals, but it's not enough at his 5,500 salary. The matchup is not a good one either. I think you can do better than Thad Young. Nick Vucevic at 7,000. He had an off game in the last one, still put up 34 points. So at 7,000, I feel like he is relatively safe against Miles Turner, who's not good at defense at this point in his career. Good shot blocker, not good at defense. So I think that Vooch is definitely worth a look. He's at 65 on DraftKings, which is a brilliant price, and he is one of the better plays on the board over there. Miles Turner at 6,800. Yeah, he's in a good spot as well. He put 43 up in the last game. He's putting up some nice numbers, so I would have no issue with using either of these centers. I would lean Vooch over Turner, but in a situation like on DraftKings, we've got that utility spot. Yeah, both guys can be used, but Vooch is actually cheaper than Miles Turner over on DraftKings, and that's the way that I'd be directing my attention. Bismack Biyombo at 3,800. I don't think we need to bother too much about big Bismack. All right, let's move on to the next game now. We're going to talk the New Orleans Pelicans. They're taking on the Detroit Pistons. The Pistons are favored by 6, and the total is 213. We expect Tyreek Evans to be back. We don't know if Dante Cunningham will play, who left the game with a wrist injury. Dante Cunningham is very Anthony Davis-y at the moment. I believe he's left 3 of the last 4 games and not been able to return. He's not impacting us in terms of his production, but if he misses, it means Terry Jones gets more minutes, and that makes Jones a DFS guy to look at. The problem is Terrence Jones' salary is out of control. It's $5,600 on FanDuel. That is way too high for a guy that we just don't know what sort of a role he's going to be playing or what sort of a role that Alvin Gentry is going to push him into. On DraftKings, he's at $6,000. Like, these are just write-off numbers. No interest in him whatsoever. There's zero upside in that, I believe, anyway. At point guard, Reggie Jackson's at $6,500. Yeah, he gets a good matchup here against the Pelicans. Hasn't been brilliant lately, but I can consider Reggie definitely someone to look at. Same price on DraftKings. Feel okay about using Reggie on both sides, but the guy that's been absolutely flying is obviously Drew Holiday. He's at $7,800. The dude's averaging 47 points across the last 5. The matchup though against Detroit it can be tough, but Drew's just slicing through guys at the moment. His lowest score in his last 5 games is 35 points. 7,800 is a lot though, and he's at 77 on DraftKings. So it feels like it could be a case of chasing points, coming off a back-to-back. I don't feel... I love Drew more than most people. I just don't feel that that's really great value for money at 7,700. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope at 5,600 is decent. I think there's a good spot for him, and he's at 56 on both sites. I think that is absolutely fine to consider using him. While Tyreek is not really in the discussion. Etuan Moore and Bud Hield both exceeded their value today, but being able to predict when they will do that, it's a total crapshoot. I would have more over Hield if I'm looking at GPP players, but even then, it's just a run multiple lineup situations and throw them in case they get hot. But even then, their upside is not all that high. At small forward, Marcus Morris at 5,200. He's playing a lot of minutes. He's not putting up any points. In fact, over the last 3 games, he's going at half a point per minute, which is a horrible return. At 5,200, you need him to be breaking 27, 28 points, and it just feels like it's such a long way off for Marcus Morris. Now, this matchup's a really good one for him. So I would absolutely look at Marcus Morris as a guy that the matchup loves, the projections seem to like, and whose form has been bad, but I would look at him and have no confidence, but I would look at him in the GPP and go, I reckon I can get away with Marcus Morris here, because when he goes off, and he does occasionally go off, it's big. It's 40 points, it's 50 points, and that's huge. But when he is himself, or he's his usual self, it's 18 points, it's 16 points, it's 20 points in 44 minutes. It's shit like that, which just screams GPP, really, for Marcus Morris. Dante Cunningham and Solly Hill have no use at power forward. The tackle box, John Lua, is at 4,800, has not been providing the similar value that he was prior to his injury. I think you can look elsewhere, and Toby Harris has also dropped off. He's at 5,800, Toby, but I like this matchup for Harris, and I would feel okay about using Toby Harris in both cash and in GPP, despite the slight drop-off in his form. I think this is a great opportunity with the Pels on a back-to-back for him to come in here and drop 32, 33, which at that sub 6,000 price tag is actually okay. I like that Donatas Motiejunas is getting 22 minutes a night, but the dude needs 30 minutes a night to be useful. He's at 3,700, and he's just not going to produce at that sort of price. Tony Davis is at 11,200. He struggled today, dropped 51. How is your stomach for injury? I feel okay about Davis now that the thigh bruise is done, and if he gets a knock on it, it's not going to re-aggravate. I feel good about that now. I still understand trepidation with using him in cash, but you have to feel pretty good about the recent performances he's put up. Over on DraftKings, he's at 10,500, which is a really good price for the sort of output that you're getting. But obviously, there is a risk. The last three times that Davis has played the Pistons, 3-game average, he is averaging 75 points. 75 average over the last 3 times. He is an awesome GPP play, and I do feel that he is cashy, but there is definitely a risk there with cash. There's a definite risk. But the GPP is like brilliant because he crushes this team, he's playing well, and I do feel that the issue is done, thankfully, hopefully. At center, Andre Drummond. Speaking of people crushing, Drummond is averaging 50 himself against the Pelicans the last 3 games. He dropped 66 in the last game and is now averaging 50 in his last 3 contests in general. The price has bumped up $700, but he is as inconsistent as they come. But this matchup is just so tasty, especially when you look at him on DraftKings at 7,900. a fresh Pistons team who didn't play on Tuesday, he could come out and easily drop a 50. Again, it's probably not as big of a risk as taking Anthony Davis in cash, but there is still risk with Drummond because we've seen him just throw up turds very often. Great GPP because he can go for 60, he can go for 70, he can drop 50 at $7,000, which occasionally he's been at, but he can drop 25 as well. But I feel okay about Drummo here. I feel like that I would actually reach for him a little bit in cash. I wouldn't feel confident about it, but I'd feel okay. Like sometimes you do take a marginal risk in cash. You're trying to eliminate it as much as you can, but sometimes you do take that risk and it pays off. It's got to be a calculated risk though. There are some players I just never would take that risk for. New York and Brooklyn. The battle of the, what do you call it? What's it called in baseball? The Subway Series? I think that's what it's called. There's my baseball knowledge coming to the fore. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. All right, let's talk about the Knicks, who are favored by 2.5. Yes, just 2.5. The total is 223 points. We don't know if Porzingis is going to play. He missed today's game with that illness, and Joe Harris has been upgraded to probable for the Nets, but you probably don't care. If Porzingis misses, then it's all aboard the Bill Hernan-Gomez train again, although it is Jeff Hornacek, so that could mean 4 minutes for Bill, could mean 8 minutes, it could mean 35 minutes of Kylo Quinn. There is always risk associated with what Hornacek does because I feel like he just scribbles his rotation on the back of a packet of chewing gum before the game and goes, oh, this is probably do, and then runs it from there. And then someone might give him a nudge in the third quarter. They go, Jeff, how about Billy? Oh shit, knew I forgot someone. That's the way that it sort of looks. It's like, center, go in. And Kylo Quinn gets up first. Yep, you're in. Work it out. But if Porzingis is out, I do love Billy here. I think you feel 80% confident that he's going to be able to get enough run to be a useful contributor. No Derrick Rose, so Brando Jennings is in play again. He had 34 today. He's at 5,600. Yep, no problem. Load him up. And someone did ask me today as well about my DFS lineup building strategy, which I have mentioned before. But the way that I do it is I don't put studs in first. I will go ahead and I will put in the guys who I say, this guy's a lock. This guy he's not a lock, but these are the guys I want in because they're in great situations and their price is not reflective of the situation. Those guys go in, and then I build the rest of the lineup around that and then see how does the lineup fit. Have I got cash left over? Let's upgrade a guy. Let's upgrade a couple of guys. But there are guys that you want in because they've got this great points to dollar value ratio. And that's the way that I build a lineup. At point guard, the Nets guys, Spencer Dinwiddie, Isaiah Whitehead, both playing fairly well at the moment. Whitehead, in fact, is averaging 26 over the last 3 games. Dinwiddie is averaging 20. And they're at 3,900 for Dinwiddie and 4,000 for Whitehead. So using either one of them is absolutely fine. In fact, Whitehead is priced lower than Dinwiddie over on DraftKings, but I still do believe, despite the last couple of games, I believe that Dinwiddie is the better player and the better play. But you could use either of them in a tournament. It's somewhat of a toss-up, but they could give you 26, 28, 29 points, and at that sub 4,000 price tag, that's obviously returning enough value for you. At shooting guard, Justin Holiday, well, we just never know what we're going to get out of him. Sean Kilpatrick's not really worth the look, and Karis LeVert's going to be the guy that everyone's going to be interested in. He's at 4,500. The guy is averaging under 20 points in the last 3 on DraftKings. He's averaging 23 over the last 5, where he's at $4,000. I don't see the total upside in using him. He is not a guy that I'd be locking into a lineup to begin with and then building out from there. But in a GPP, I can see the appeal because I know that he can get to 30 points, and at that sort of salary, then that works out. But with Kenny Atkinson in control, that the ability to him to get to 30 minutes is going to be severely limited. Courtney Lee at 4,800, that's just too high for me with so many other games on the docket. Rondé Hollis-Jefferson does not play enough. Bojan Bogdanovic at 4,300 for Bog. I like him as a GPP guy. Obviously, it's a good matchup for him. He's actually averaging 21 across the last, 21 across the last 3, and has had a 29-point game in there. The upside for him is great. The downside is terrible. So he is a guy that he never really creeps into cash game territory for me. Bojan Bogdanovic. Other small forwards. of course, we've got to talk about Carmelo Anthony. He's at 8,500. A little bit of a down day for Melo today, but this matchup is very tasty. The Knicks aren't looking to smash them, I wouldn't have thought. So he should stay in the game. He should be able to exceed 40 points. No problem with Melo. At 75 on DraftKings, it is one of those ones that I'd want to lock in early and go, all right, there's a fair chunk of value here coming from Melo at that 7,500. We should expect 43, 44 points out of him. And let's try and build around that. I think it's a really good price. It's not quite as good for him over on FanDuel, but it is still he's still a decent option there. At power forward, there's not a lot to love unless you're a big fan of Trevor Booker. He's at 4,900 now. If Porzingis plays at 6,500, I love the tournament upside. It's massive tournament upside there, but we just don't know his status at this point. For the centers, Brook Lopez is at 7,400. Good matchup for Brook. Huge matchup against the Knicks. He can really go off. So this is a lot of the time he's been too highly priced on FanDuel. The price is still there at 7,400, but this is a time where he can easily exceed it. On DraftKings at 6,700 is brilliant. That is a very, very good price over on DraftKings. And again, that is a very good situation for him at that price. Talked to Bill Hernan-Gomez already. Cock had 30 points today and $4,100. No way of trusting it though. No, I feel more trustworthy of Hernan-Gomez, and at 4,300 he is definitely worth a look, despite the Jeff Hornacek nature of how the rotation goes, which is just always remains frustrating. The Atlanta Hawks, they are taking on the winners of 8 straight Miami Heat. The Hawks are favored by 2. It's in Miami, and the total is 203 points here. James Johnson, Jimmy Johnson, our only son, he is probable. He suffered a stinger at the end of the game on Monday, but he is right to go. Where Luke Babbitt suffered an ankle sprain, returned to the game after having it retaped, but he is now listed as questionable. I don't think that impacts too much. In fact, actually, if Babbitt is out, it probably even strengthens Jim Johnson's case. Was there any other injuries? No, we're good. Unless you're just dying to know about Thiago Splitter news, which we've literally heard nothing on for weeks. At point guard, Dennis Schroeder at 6,700. The Heat have been a tough team for point guards to play against, but that's eased up now. It's not as bad as it used to be. Schroeder's at 6,700. He's been putting up some good numbers, but his consistency's been waning a little bit. I feel alright about using Dennis, but not totally comfortable about recommending him as a great option. Whilst Goran Dragic is now up to $8,000. That's probably pushing the friendship just a little bit on what he can do. Yes, he's been great, but 8,000 is definitely up there. The matchup for him is a decent one. It's a pretty good one, and the guy's averaging 40 points over the last 3. But you're almost the Hawks aren't as good a matchup as what they were in the past for point guards. I would totally be okay with using Dragic in GPPs, but I would feel not confident in cash. Now, on DraftKings, he's at 7,400, so I love that. That's a good cash play. I think it's a good GPP play as well. And somehow, after scoring 42 points in the last game, his salary dropped by $200. So sometimes the pricing algorithms don't necessarily make the largest amount of sense on these sites. Tyler Johnson, I'm going to need to see a little bit more out of him until I'm willing to spend $5,800. Shooting guards, Wayne Ellington, no thanks. Timmy Hardaway had 38 in the last game, but that was a quadruple overtime game. He is at 4,900. He is a GPP only play. And what do we do with Dion Waiters? He is now up to 7,100. I don't feel good about using him at 7,100. He's at 6,800 on DraftKings. I don't feel good about using him at 6,800. Tyler Johnson is back. He's not at full minutes, but he's back. That's a ballsy call to go and use $7,100 on Dion Waiters. I will not be having balls that big to do it. My balls are fairly good size, but they're not that big. At small forward, Tabo Cephalosha missed the last game. He's at 3,600. I don't care. Kent Bazemore had a big one as well. He's averaging 30 over the last 5. Kent at $5,000, but you should not feel any obligation to trust Kent Bazemore. He's a guy that we would look at is a tournament play who can have some upside, but the matchup's not ideal for him, and Kent Bazemore's not ideal for him either. Scooter Magruder, no thanks. At power forward, Jim Johnson's at 6,100, absolutely killing it at the moment, averaging 36 over the last 3. Like the matchup, no problem with using Jim. I'm not sure if he does really much tournament upside, but at 5,800 on DraftKings, that's brilliant pricing too. But did I say tournament? I meant he doesn't have much cash reliability, but he's got some tournament upside. but I feel okay about using him in either format, really. Assuming he plays, which we assume he does. Paul Millsap at $8,400. They bumped him $400 because he played 61 minutes in the last game. Like, that's not fair. It's not that it's not fair. You can do whatever you want to your salary, but it's not representative of where his form actually is at. At 8,400, I think there are going to be better options than Paul, because despite scoring 71 in the last game, he is averaging under 40 across the last 5. 8,400 is too much. On DraftKings at 7,800, it's not bad. That's a price that I think that he can easily be able to replicate and get you the 40 plus points. So I do like Paul Millsap in that scenario on DraftKings. At center, Hassan Whiteside is at 8,700. He is coming nowhere close to giving that value, and now he takes on Dwight Howard. So that's a no from me. Although on DraftKings at 7,300, there is tournament upside there, definitely. As for Dwighty, he's at 72 on DraftKings, 71 on FanDuel. I think on FanDuel I'd be okay with using him. I don't think it screams brilliant value, but I'd be all right at considering him at 7,100. I think there is some level of consistency there that you should be getting at least 30 plus out of Dwight, and approaching 35, which is great at that sort of a price tag. The next game we are at now, we're going to talk Toronto Raptors. They are taking on the Boston Celtics, a battle of the 2 and the 3 seed. The Wizards will be grateful that one of these teams loses, so they're going to jump ahead of them, or not jump ahead of them, but push up close to them. No spread released for this one now. Avery Bradley is questionable. We don't know if he'll be back. We know that DeMar DeRozan is out, though, for Toronto, so there is much Norm Powell love to be had. At point guard, Kyle Lowry, 8,700. He gets to take on the might of Isaiah Thomas's defense. He is crushing it at the moment, Lowry. I really like the spot here for him. I think it's good value to consider him. If you're spending up, I feel pretty confident of him getting 40 plus. He's at 86 on DraftKings. No worries. This is a really, really good spot for Lowry, and he's got a great history against Boston. You should be looking at 45 plus, or feeling pretty confident of 45 plus. How about my prognosticating nemesis, Isaiah Thomas? 10,600. You can have it. He's been good. He's been remarkable. He's been historic. But he's not $10,600 worth, I'm sorry. He's averaging under 50 points over the last 5. And I say that like it's a bad thing. Oh man, he's not even averaging 50. But if you're coming at 10,600, I need 50. I need 50 every day. 10,600 is a write-off of a price. On DraftKings, it's much more manageable. It's 9,500, where he is averaging 53 points. So that is a fine price. The Kyle Lowry defense is going to be somewhat of a factor for Isaiah, but not large enough to dissuade me from using him over there. But on FanDuel, if you use Thomas, I would be interested to see how many people that actually use Isaiah Thomas can fill out winning lineups, because that price is just too high in my opinion. Now, my track record with Isaiah Thomas is whatever I say, the opposite's going to come true. So if I say it's too high, he's probably going to drop 70. But using logic, which I try to do most of the times, that's just too high. It's just where the only way to go is down from there. And that's not the way that I think you want to approach DFS lineups. At shooting guard, let's talk let's talk Avery Bradley, but we're not going to be using him if he happens to return. Let's talk Norm Powell. He's at 4,200. He dropped 32 today. Almost, we talk about guys that you lock in to start a lineup. That's the one, especially in cash. Now, he's going to be very highly owned. He's going to be a chalkish type play. In tournaments, you might want to go a different direction, but he's going to have to be owned in cash, I believe. On DraftKings at 5,500, it's not quite as necessary. Now, he was good today, but I'm not sure that he's good enough for me to totally just buy that. All right, you're getting 5,500 easily. Like, he's just going to come out and drop 30. I don't think that. Now, I believe that Powell is good. You heard me talk about it earlier, but I just don't think that 5,500 makes him an automatic lock play guy. Any other one to talk about at shooting guard? No. I skipped Marcus Smart before because we don't need to talk about Marcus Smart. At small forward, Terry Ross, just not happening. Always can throw him in a GPP in your multiple lineups, but that's really about it for Tezza. And Jay Crowder's crushing it now. because he's crushing it, his salary is up to 6,600, so that takes him off the board for me. That's too high, considering his production is basically a little bit less than that sort of a level. On DraftKings at 6,200, he is in a better spot, but I don't like the matchup, and I just don't feel comfortable with spending 6+ on Jay Crowder at this point in the season. Damari Carroll at 4,000, GPP, maybe I would consider it a GPP, but it's a second half of back-to-back. The guy is a cripple, basically, so let's just band together and say no. Jaylen Brown, who has struggled in his last couple of starts, he's at 3,800. If Avery Bradley's out, sure, take a GPP punt, but it's not a great situation for him. Pat Patterson at 3,900. Look, putting up some decent numbers, but definitely not a tournament guy because there's zero upside in Pat Patterson, and in cash, I don't feel confident that he will do what he's done. Jonas Jerebko will start, but that won't matter too much for us. At centre, Jonas at 5,800. Love the matchup for Jonas. He dropped 34 today. He gets 30 points. You're in business, so I like it. 54 on DraftKings is a brilliant price for him as well, where he is averaging 31 across the last three. So Jonas Valanciunas, I think he's one of the better centre players on the board. Al Horford, he's like the Brook Lopez. He's 76 on FanDuel. Nope. On DraftKings, 6,800. Fine. I would take Jonas over him in both cases. I wouldn't use Al on FanDuel, but I would take Jonas on DraftKings. But on DraftKings, he's at a $200 price dip, and he is absolutely usable over there. Don't feel great about it. There are better options, but he is usable. Whereas on good old FanDuel, he's a pretty tough sell to me. As for Bebe Nogueira, he is at 3,900. He had 23 points. I think you should feel pretty good about Bebe getting 20 points most times, or around that 20-point mark, and he could fill out a roster if you've gone high-priced in other areas. Man, I need a sub-4,000 center. He's Bebe. Do it. Maybe that works for you. He's at 38 on DraftKings as well, so it can work out. It can be useful. Let's go to the next game now. We're going to talk Philadelphia. They are taking on the Dallas Mavericks, the surging Philadelphia 76ers and the surging Dallas Mavericks. What a time. The Mavericks are favored by 6. Joel Embiid will not play. The total is 202 points here. So let's talk, is there any Dallas injuries? Yeah, Darren Williams is listed as questionable. If Darren Williams is out, it's all about Yogi Ferrell, as it has been the last couple of games. So don't go loading up on Yogi if we still don't have Darren Williams news before lock, because that could just completely sink your lineup. Speaking of Darren, he's at 6,200. I won't be investing in him at that price, whereas Ferrell is at 4,900. So they've bumped him up quite a lot, Yogi, and even if Darren is out, I'm not 100% sure that 4,900 is the greatest price to be spending up on Yogi Ferrell. On DraftKings at 4,000, it's a no-brainer. That is an absolute automatic. Let's put him in if Darren Williams is out. 49 on FanDuel, it's probably not the greatest. TJ McConnell is at 5,900. I feel pretty good about saying TJ is worth a look. Now, the matchup is a negative, and that's a concern, but I feel okay about saying, TJ can get me 30. If the slate wasn't 12 games, he'd be a lot higher in my estimation, so I'll probably leave him off in most cases. At shooting guard, Wes Matthews at 5,600 on FanDuel. I think that he is decent-ish for cash here, but saying Wes Matthews and cash in the same sentence does make me flinch a little bit. On DraftKings, where he's at 4,700, it's fantastic. Got no concerns with him over at that price. Like, his lowest score in the last 5 games is 22, and at 4,700, that's almost where the value is, and then he can go bigger and get 30 or 34 or 35, and then it's a huge win. So I really like Wes over on DraftKings as opposed to him on FanDuel. Source Castillo's at 3,700. He had 21 in the last game, but nothing to see there. While Seth Curry at 58, so that's a big salary rise for Seth as well, and that puts him into that Terrence Jones bucket of like, where's the upside? Where's my ability to gain value out of this? I don't love it for Seth Curry at that price. Over on DraftKings, he's at 5,400. Yeah, decent-ish price rise there, just $100, but he'd risen the other day. Yeah, there are better options than Seth Curry at that elevated price. Now, Seth's been great, but he hasn't been good enough to justify that price, I don't believe. The pencil, Harrison Barnes at 6,700. Shout out to other people who are just finding out about the pencil nickname courtesy of Andrew over at Roto Grinders in his daily article, which I do suggest you go and read. He has some good stuff over at Roto Grinders, and he continually drops some locked on fantasy basketball nicknames in his articles, and getting the comments section going with the pencil. So get the word out that is the one nickname that I want to stick. I need the pencil out there. Need to sharpen it up. Terrible pun. 6,700 for the pencil. He's averaging 35 over the last 3. The matchup here is a decent one for him, but not great because you know who's a good defender? Bob Cove. And that's who's going to go onto the pencil. So Harrison Barnes is very dependent on his scoring, and that makes him a GPP guy to me rather than a cash play. As for Bob Cove, he's now up to 6,400. That is a huge price rise. 6,300 on DraftKings, a huge price rise, but he's killing it. He's averaging 42 over the last 3 on DraftKings. He's averaging 38 on FanDuel. But is it enough at that? Is he worth that increased price? In this matchup, I've been big on Bob Cove lately. I reckon I'll find the value in a different spot. I just don't have full trust in him being able to come out there and just smash 35 points and go, yep, got the value back. I just don't feel that. I don't feel that as being the greatest way to look at it. Dwight Powell at 3,800. He had a big game in the last one, Dwight. 32 points. Rick Carlisle's use of him can be infuriating, but with Bogut out and Mejri not playing, I think that Powell at 3,800 is definitely worth a look. He's at 35 on DraftKings. He gets 20 points. He's got value back. And that's not that hard to do if he finds himself with a 20-plus minute role, which I believe he will. So I think that Dwight Powell is actually worth a look. Dirk is at 5,600. I don't feel good about it with Dirk. 5,000 on DraftKings I do. Really, really like him on DraftKings at 5,000. 56 on FanDuel, not worth it to me. Dario Saric had 31 points in the last game. He is at 4,400. Dario, that is strictly a GPP play. There is no reliability there with him. And Nerlens Noel at 6,200. Well, they've bumped that salary up to take all the value out of that, so there is no chance there for me. He is at that same price on both sides. So Nerlens, the run was nice while it lasted. I will not be using you at 6,200. Ersan Ilyasova at 58. Absolutely a GPP guy, but that's probably about it for him. The centres, well, we're only looking at Jali Okafor, and we should probably look in a different spot because that's not looking like a great play to me. Let's move on to the next one now. We're going to talk Milwaukee. They are taking on the Utah Jazz. I believe it's got to bring my screen up. Yep, they are. The Utah Jazz are favoured by 8, and the total is 198.5. Derek Favors missed the last game due to rest. We assume that he will be back in action for this one, but he's not. He's just so out of touch at the moment that it is really, really tough to consider him. This game, there's not a lot to love in it, to be honest. Georgie Hill's at $6,000. The matchup against Milwaukee, they do strangle point guard, so I'm not really looking forward to using George Hill in this sort of a spot, whereas Malcolm Brogdon and Matthew Dellavedova, well, the Utah Jazz, they strangle point guards as well. 4,900 for Brogo is too high. Daly at 4,200 is also too high. I'm sure you can do better than both of those guys. Do they even have tournament upside? They've got some, but nothing that's really standing out to me as being a great sort of scenario for those players. At shooting guard, Yanni is at 9,900. Hasn't really gotten to those heights lately, averaging just 43 over the last 5 with a high score of 47. That's not enough for 9,900, but the salary's come down. The problem is the pace of this game, and the matchup here is probably turning me off spending that sort of money on Antetokounmpo. At 10,100 on DraftKings, it's even less interesting. At the other shooting guard position, Rocket Rodney Hood, 4,500 for Rocket. That's the new one. I'm trying to get that to stick. Rocket now. Rocket Rodney Hood. I'm done with just calling him Rod. Rocket. Rocket at 4,500. He had 28 in that last game. His second one back from injury. I don't put full faith in him doing it again, but I would be looking at Rocket as a GPP player. So have a look at Rocket Rodney Hood and consider him there. 4,100 over on DraftKings. Yeah, I like that a lot. That is even coming into cash game consideration. I'm not quite there with it yet, but at 4,100, that's damn cheap. And he could easily drop 30. Easily. He's very talented. 4,100 is very cheap. Alec Burks just not going to play enough. At small forward, Gordo Hayward is at 7,400. Hasn't been at that spot yet. Hasn't really been at the right level. Averaging only 27 over the last 5. The matchup is great for him. Down at 6,600 on DraftKings is ludicrous. Can't see why you wouldn't want to use him on DraftKings at 6,600. That is stupendously low. Yes, he has struggled, but at that price, it's really hard to go past. The other small forwards are just a bunch of nothing. At power forward, Derek Favors at 4,700. I like Derek Favors, but I'm finding it really hard to get behind him. But this matchup against Milwaukee, they are bad against big men. Could that day off have given Favors that ample time to recovery? He hasn't played in 5 days. GPP for Favors, definitely worth a look. At 5,000 on DraftKings, the same. GPP, but probably not as interesting as what he can be on FanDuel. 7,600 for Jabari Parker has not been living up to that number, and now he gets a stinker of a matchup. So I think that's a pass there for me. At center, Greg Monroe, 5,800, dropped 42 in the last game, but it's Jason Kidd, man. There's two things here. It's Jason Kidd and it's Rudy Gobert that he's going up against. So that to me is a double no for Greg Monroe. Let's look in a different direction. In fact, let's look at Rudy Gobert, who's at 7,700. Centers against the Bucks, they can usually feast. Now, Rude has not been putting up the sort of numbers that we'd want, averaging under 31 points in the last 5, which is 7,700. Somehow they've bumped him up by $300, but that's not enough production. On DraftKings, he comes in at 6,800. I've got no problem with using him in this matchup here against the Bucks. I just feel a little bit hesitant at 7,700 on FanDuel, but it's not a terrible situation for him. It's not great, but it's not terrible. Let's move on to the next one now. We're going to talk the Memphis Grizzlies. They are taking on the Denver Nuggets. The no spread currently released for this one yet. We don't know the status of guys like Emmanuel Mudiay or Farton Will Barton, who missed today's game for Denver. And Nick Jokic, who all of those guys could be back. So there's a lot of stuff to check out. If Jokic is out, it's Ken Fareed that gets the bump. I don't think we'll go back to the use of Nurkic well again. And if Barton and Mudiay are out, then it becomes Jameer Nelson and Jamal Murray to take on the value there. Let's talk point guards here. Mike Conley not only crushed me in the last game, but crushed the Phoenix Suns. 61 points at 7,900, and now he gets the tasty matchup of the Denver Nuggets defense. So I think that Conley is definitely worth a look. Even though that price is very high and he's at 73 on DraftKings, you should feel pretty good about Mike Conley being able to at least get you close to that value. He is on a very, very strong run at the moment. The other point guard, as I said, it just depends on if Mudiay is playing or not. Otherwise, we look at Jameer Nelson, who's at 5,100 and puts up some decent numbers at that price. Not going to be the strongest play out there, but at 5,100, he becomes a nice option. Over on DraftKings, he's at 56, which probably takes a little bit of the value away from him at that expensive price. At shooting guard, Gaz Harris is at 5,000. Big game today. Yeah, no problem. Barton's absence doesn't bother me. Like if Barton's in or out, Harris is playing 33, 32 minutes. That's what he's going to do. So I feel okay about Barton. The problem is the Memphis defense is somewhat of a concern, and that might be a bit to worry about. At 4,800 on DraftKings as well, there's infinite value. Not infinite. There's a lot of value in using Gaza. So I think that he can be considered someone to look at. Tone Allen is not a high priority player, whereas Farton Will Barton at $5,000, I will have no interest in using him at that sort of a salary. The small forwards, Chandler Parsons at minimum salary. He looked terrible in the last game. He's at 3,200. He could smash through value. Like he could drop 25 at 3,200, and that's a great return. But that is clearly a GPP scenario. But he's taking on the Nuggets, which is not a tough matchup in that sort of a sense. I'm not recommending it, but it is something that you can consider, just given the fact that he has had a decent game in the last couple. Just looked terrible in the last one that he played. Wilson Chandler was great today. He's at 5,700. If we're seeing the absence of Jokic, it moves Fareed more to the 5, so Chandler can get a little bit more playing time at the 4. At 5,700, he would be decent if he wasn't playing the Grizzlies, and I just don't like this matchup for Wilson going up against Memphis. Jimmy Ennis, the Rooster. The Rooster's at 7,300. Just the matchup just doesn't work for me. At power forward, Zebo at 6,300 had a decent game in the last one, but 6,300 is just too expensive for what Zach Randolph brings. At 6,000 on DraftKings, I can see the allure there, especially in a matchup against the Nuggets. I would consider him on DraftKings. I just don't really love it over on FanDuel. Jermichael Green, no interest. Darrell Arthur. Let's talk Nick Jokic. He's at 10,800. In a matchup against Marc Gasol at 10,800, coming back from an injury, I think I'll pass. and you know that I'm the biggest Jokic fan out there. Now, at DraftKings at 9,800, does the Gasol matchup worry us that much? It probably should, but I would consider it on DraftKings at 9,800. I wouldn't on FanDuel at 10,800. That's just too expensive. Ken Fareed at 6,900.
Giggity.
He's had some big games. Jokic returning does limit what Fareed can do, so I'll be more cautious. Oh, not more cautious. There's no way I'd use him at 6,900. In fact, even if Jokic is out, that price is probably just a little bit too high for Kenneth Fareed. At center, Marc Gasol at 8,800. No, great player, way too high. 7,800 on DraftKings, no problem. Love it. Averaging 47 across the last 5. Great matchup. Go ahead. Just don't want to spend that extra cash on FanDuel. It just seems way too high for me. Also, Yusuf Nurkic. Yeah, cool. No worries. I don't think we'll be going back to the Yusuf Nurkic well, who had 1 point today. The Clippers and the Phoenix Suns. The Clippers are favored by 4, and the total is 220.5. Dragon Bender is a player we need to check the status of. Well, we don't, because he's not having too much of an impact on us DFS-wise. But if he is out, it probably forces Earl Watson's hand a little bit more towards Marquise Chris, which could make a difference. So that is something to pay attention to. At point guard, Eric Bledsoe was down in the last game. He is at 9,400. In a matchup against the Clippers, yes, there's no Chris Paul, but 9,400 for Bled doesn't feel awesome to me. I'd feel pretty good about him getting 40 points, but I need more than that at 9,400. So that's just, it's just too high. I just will want to look in a different direction than 9,400 for Eric Bledsoe. He's at 9,000 on DraftKings, which is all right, but again, I think we can do better than spending that much on him. Austin Rivers, the starting point guard for the Clippers, is at 5,800. Great matchup for him. Really good spot going up against Phoenix. At 5,800, I'm not sure there's much upside. I would look at him as a GPP guy, maybe, but I don't feel great about it. And Ray Felton at 46. I just don't think the minutes are going to be there enough for him to be worthwhile. Devin Booker is at 6,900 now. That is a lot. He's at 7,000 on DraftKings. It's a lot. I don't believe that he can make up that value. He's scoring at a huge rate, but he's not doing enough in the other areas for us to say he is getting me 36 points a game. I just don't see him doing that. He's been great, no doubt about it. His highest score over the last 5 games is 32 points. His lowest score is 30. That is the model of consistency. But at 6,900, it's not enough. And he's done well in those games. 6,900 seems like a losing bet to spend that on Devin Booker with so many. On lighter slate nights, you can afford to go lower ratios because the scores generally aren't going to be as high. 12 games on, that's not going to work for you. You need to look in a different direction. Brandon Knight, no thanks. That's not the direction you look. JJ Redick at 4,700 has been disappointing. I don't really think that's a key one to look at. And Jamal Crawford is not interesting at 4,500. Small forwards, well, the Clippers small forwards are a joke, but let's talk about Phoenix. It's PJ Tucker and TJ Warren, the Jays. 4,100 for TJ. He only played 21 minutes in the last game. At 4,100, I love the upside. He will occasionally have this game, and this is a brilliant game in terms of ease of matchup for him. He'll have this game where he gets hot and drops 35. But trusting him or trusting Earl Watson is impossible. But I do like his GPP upside. As for PJ Tucker, he's at 4,500. I don't really know what to make of that. I don't know how much value there is in PJ. Now at 4,200 for him on DraftKings, I feel a little bit better, but I don't love him for tournaments. And I don't have trust in him for cash. So that, to me, is a no-go. At power forward, Blake Griffin at 8,900. He's going to need to do a lot more than what he's currently doing to justify that price on FanDuel. At 7,500 on DraftKings, that's getting a little bit better. And I can see maybe having a dabble at that, but it'd have to be a GPP, and I wouldn't feel great about it, to be honest. Marquise Chris dropped 30 in the last game at 3,700. The GPP upside is through the roof. The Earl Watson dickery is through the roof as well. So we don't know what Chris we're going to get. We're going to get bumbling, foul-prone idiot. We're going to get the one who stays on the court and puts up numbers. That's why he screams a GPP option. His last 5 games, he's had a high score of 30 and a low score of 8. That is why he is GPP only. And at that sub 4,000 price, you get 30 points. It is an absolute laugher. You love it. It's just not easy to expect it, unfortunately. At center, we're talking Tyson Chandler at 5,800 on FanDuel. A nice price drop there, but his production has dropped as well. I feel okay about Chandler going out there and playing 30 minutes and being able to give you maybe 30 points against DeAndre Jordan. I feel pretty good about it. So I think that we're going to see some decent minutes for Chandler and some decent production. So he is someone to look at, 5,900 on DraftKings as well, whereas DeAndre Jordan comes in at 7,300. The Suns are an okay matchup for him, but I just don't feel totally in love with that price tag. He's at 8,000 on DraftKings, and I know immediately that I'm not interested in that. Not on DraftKings, on FanDuel, 8,000, not interested. If we head to DraftKings at 7,300, yeah, he's had a good record against Phoenix. I could get behind it, and I think that it is worth looking at, and he does have value, but he's not going to be my first choice center. All right, we have got 2 games left to preview in this monster 12-game slate of games. Chicago and Oklahoma City. The Thunder are favored by 3.5, and the total is 207. Taj Gibson is expected back after missing last game. Bob Portis started in his place. He will likely go back to being out of the rotation, and Nick Mirotic will cop a hit in minutes as well. Let's talk point guards. Russ is at 12,600, and he gets the Bulls, who are giving up a shit ton of points to point guard. So this is a great opportunity for Russell Westbrook, who only had the 49 today, only for him to go for 70. He could just rip them apart, the Bulls. So that would be great for Thunder people. It would be great for OKC. It would be great for his owners. And he's at 12,000 on DraftKings as well. So yeah, Russ is the high price guy that I think is going to be the best option on this entire slate. The Bulls point guards, that is a joke. So that is a no from me. Rondo had 31 points in the last game. At 5,200, they've bumped his salary. Do you take a risk on Rondo? The answer to me is no. But at 4,100 on DraftKings, maybe. Consider it. Consider it a GPP. That is my deep, sneaky GPP one, if they go back to Rondo. Not saying it's the right thing to do, but right thing in the Bulls doesn't always pull together. Shooting guards. Vic Oladipo at 6,000. I just think Oladipo is going to be consistently around that 30-point mark, which is absolutely fine. He's at 55 on DraftKings, which is a number I really like. That's a great price. As for Dwayne Wade, 7,700 is just way too expensive. I will have nothing to do with that. He's at 7,000 on DraftKings, which is okay. I think there's something to see there, but I'm not really feeling it as being a brilliant option or anything along those lines. Small forward, Paul Zipser is getting minutes. It's not enough production, so I don't think the upside's there. Same with Dougie Mack. And Jim Butler is at 9,500, Jim. He had 53 in the last game. He had 55 on DraftKings. He's a nice 8,800 on DraftKings, so I really like that price. Definitely like using him there. 95 on FanDuel. You're probably looking at a little bit too expensive, but the upside is clearly there, so he becomes a GPP high-price player. Andre Robertson, 3,700. I don't even know why I bothered. No. Domantas Sabonis at minimum salary. Yes, go for him. Absolutely worth it. 3,300. The Bulls front court is not good. Sabonis had a big double-double in 35 minutes today. Not saying he's repeating that, but at those minimum type salaries, then he should easily be able to exceed 20 points in this new scenario with that Enes Kanter. So I do like Sabonis here. Definitely worth a look. Taj Gibson, no, not interested in him in this sort of a matchup, and Nick Mirotic not either. Steve Adams at 6,000. He gets a good matchup here against Robin Lopez. Has been down the last couple of games. Hasn't been where he needs to be, but I think this is a good chance for him to get back over 30 points. At 5,400 on DraftKings, it is a brilliant play as well. Really like it over there. Joffrey Laverne is a GPP option at minimum salary. Didn't really light the world on fire today, but could easily have a game where he goes for 25. And Robin Lopez at 4,700. Monster in the last one, Robin. And now he takes on Steven Adams. So that was a nice game that you play Robin Lopez, and now that you don't, because he's going up against Steve Adams. The last game of the night could be a snoozer, because it's the Warriors. It's the Hornets traveling to Golden State to take on the Warriors. Let's start by saying that Steph Curry is likely back. Zaza Pachulia is considered questionable. Let's take a look at the Warriors, who they're favored by 14. The total is 223. So we've got a pretty large total to work with here. Steph is at 9,300. Big price for Steph. He's been playing well, but am not totally in love with that. Head to DraftKings at 8,500. I think it's good for Steph at 8,500. Now, his consistency hasn't been great, so I would lean more towards tournaments for Steph, but he should absolutely be in consideration over on DraftKings for the tournaments. Definitely needs to be considered over there. As for Kemba, 8,300 has been putting up good numbers, but 8,300 is just not striking me as being great value. 8,000 on DraftKings, better. Totally behind using Kemba on DraftKings. Shooting guards. Clay is strictly a GPP play. You don't want to use him in cash. He's at 6,300, while Nick Batum at 7,300. Yeah, I think Batum at 7,300 is probably not high upside play, but a decent cash. Not good on DraftKings at 74, but 73 on FanDuel definitely has some value to be looked at there for Nicola Batum. Small forwards, Kevin Durant is at 10,700. You should feel pretty good about Durant getting 50, and you should love it because he's at 10,000 on DraftKings. So huge value for him over on both sides, and he is a nice high-price guy that I would feel relatively confident about rolling out there in most scenarios. Andre Iguodala is averaging 25 points, which would look great if his salary hadn't jumped up to 4,400. So I don't have faith in him continuing it, and I also don't love it, that expanded price tag. Mike Kidd-Gilchrist at 5,500. Well, he dropped right off in today's game, so that's not going to be interesting there. Power forward Draymond 7,300. Big price drop. His form has dropped as well, averaging only 25 over the last 5. I love this spot here for Draymond Green though. We should be hoping for 40 points there, so really do like that. At 81 on DraftKings, he's still a good play, but not as good as what he is on FanDuel. But yeah, I said the form has dropped, but this matchup is a nice one for him. Frank the Tank. Yeah, he's going to get torched defensively. Marvin Williams, too expensive at 5,100. And Cody Zeller is not going to be in. So we're going to get another chance at Spencer Hawes, but I don't have faith in it because it's the Warriors and we know what centers can do. What the Warriors can do to centers. And that's going to put Spencer in a little bit of trouble. Plus his salary has risen up to 4,900. As for the other centers, it's Zaza Pachulia, it's Roy Hibbert. Find your centers in another game. Should be as simple as that. Let's talk picks of the day now. Before we wrap this show up, the show has gone a long time because there was 12 games to preview. Let's talk FanDuel. Spencer Dinwiddie at 39, but there's a number of guys you can put in there. You could put his teammate Isaiah Whitehead in there. Brando Jennings at 56 and Russ Westbrook at 12.6. At shooting guard, Norm Powell 42, Oladipo at 6,000, and no high-price shooting guards that I really like on FanDuel, to be honest. Small forward TJ Warren 41. Gordo Hayward at 74 and Kevin Durant at 10.7. At power forward, Dwight Powell 38, Draymond's at 73, and Tony Davis is at 11.2. At center, Billy Hernan-Gomez at 43, Jonas Valanciunas at 58, and Drummond at 87. On DraftKings, Spencer Dinwiddie 36, Brandon Jennings 52, and Russ Westbrook 12,000. At shooting guard, Wes Matthews 47, Vic Oladipo 55, and Jim Butler 88. Small forward, Bojan Bogdanovic 42, Gordo Hayward at 66, and Kevin Durant at 10,000. At power forward, Dwight Powell 35, Melo at 75, and Draymond 81. And at center, Billy Hernan-Gomez 39, Brookie Lopez 67, and Anthony Davis 10,500. Let's go to the Aussie sides. Moneyball, Brando Jennings 46, Reggie Jackson 63, and Kyle Lowry 94. Shooting guard, Norm Powell 41, KCP 5,000. Small forward, Shabazz Muhammad 37, Gordo at 74, and Melo at 87. Power forward, Dwight Powell 35, Serge Ibaka 59, and Tony Davis at 10.4. And at center, Nerlens Noel at 45, Steve Adams at 56, and Drummond at 8,100. On Draft Stars, Isaiah Whitehead 5650, Brando Jennings 86, and Kyle Lowry 14.5. Shooting guards, Shabazz Muhammad 5,000, Devin Booker 10.5, and Steph Curry 17.3. Small forward, Norm Powell 7,000, Jimmy Johnson 85, and Kevin Durant 19.7. At power forward, Spencer Hawes at 6'4", GPP only, could get torn up by the Warriors. Nick Vucevic 12.350, and Drummond at 15.950. And at center, Billy Hernan-Gomez 62, Steven Adams 10.750, and Rudy Gobert 14,300. We are done here, guys. Follow me on Twitter at redrock_bball. Tell your friends, share the show, subscribe, leave a review. You know all the good stuff that you can do. Plus, go to check out SeatGeek and download the app and use that promo code LOFantasy. And when you buy your tickets, you get $20 back on your first purchase. It's a win-win-win-win-win. We are done here, guys. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Dwayne Casey.